Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. Following the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the U.S. and Israel have launched another round of strikes on Iran, with President Donald Trump calling on Iranian troops to lay down their arms and on civilians in the country to rise and take over their government. We will be bringing you more from the Middle East in just a moment, but first, a look at tonight's headlines. 40-day mourning announced in Iran after Khamenei perishes in U.S.-Israeli attack. Iran launches retaliatory strikes across the Middle East, resulting in new travel warnings. And bleak forecasts for international trade as Iran's Revolutionary Guard blocks the Strait of Hormuz. The dust has not yet settled after Ali Khamenei's death, but Iran is already naming interim leaders of the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, more Israeli attacks on Iran have taken place, with the regime responding in kind, promising the most devastating offensive after already having targeted U.S. military bases and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. Randy Potts reports on key events of the last 24 hours.
After coordinated attacks from both Israel and the U.S., initial footage from Tehran showed massive plumes of black smoke rising over the capital and what appeared to be major impact damage. Iranian airspace was soon closed as, along Iran's borders, people were seen fleeing into Turkey. Online, Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the last Shah, addressed the Iranian nation.
My dear compatriots, moments of destiny lie ahead of us. The aid that the President of the United States promised to the brave people of Iran has now arrived. This is a humanitarian intervention, and its target is the Islamic Republic.
The Israeli and U.S. strikes occurred just hours after Oman's foreign minister said that a nuclear deal between Washington and Tehran was finally within reach.
I am confident, and in my assessment of the way the talks are going, I think there is really, I can see that the peace deal is within our reach.
Iran's foreign minister also said the U.S. negotiations were going well.
Everyone knows, including the Omani mediator, that the negotiations were moving in a good direction. Even the American negotiators acknowledged the fact that the negotiations were quite progressing.
But went on to claim Iran was a victim of deception.
We have had very bad experiences of diplomacy. I mean, they turned diplomacy into a sort of trap for attacking Iran. So they are not serious about diplomacy. And everyone knows now, in the region and internationally, that the United States diplomacy cannot be trusted at all.
Early on Sunday morning, Iranian state television confirmed the death via missile strike of 86-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who had led the nation since 1989. Trita Pars, a regional expert, worries about what Khamenei's death could mean for the Middle East.
The other thing that is very, very important is that the Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, was not just the head of state de facto, he was also a religious figure who had a certain importance in the world of Shia Islam, which means that he had followers in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Bahrain, in Saudi, in the UAE, in Pakistan, and many other countries. And there is a risk of major escalation in those areas precisely because of this.
Iran's military responded by launching a barrage of missiles towards Jordan, Bahrain, Israel, Qatar, and even Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. In the streets of Tehran, thousands of regime loyalists gathered outside mosques to chant slogans against the West and mourn Khamenei.
Yes, the United States and Israel attacked us, but they have made a grave mistake.
However, a different scene unfolded outside the capital, where residents were filmed cheering, clapping, and honking horns in celebration of the Supreme Leader's death. Eyewitness video from the town of Galadar showed crowds toppling a monument of Ayatollah Khamenei as onlookers cheered beside the flames. With Khamenei gone, Iran is beginning the process of searching for a new leader.
Based on Article 111 of the Constitution, today the Interim Leadership Council begins its work, and with God's power behind us, we will continue to follow the path of the Imam, the path of the dear leader, and the path of all the seekers of truth in the world.
On the ground in southern Iran, officials reported a devastating toll after an airstrike hit a girls' primary school in Minab, reportedly killing up to 160 people. And despite ongoing search and rescue efforts in the rubble of the capital, successive explosions continue to rock Tehran. For how long, no one can say. For TVP World, Randy Potts.
The U.S. and Israel are not the only targets of the Iranian regime. The attacks have wreaked havoc across the region, with massive strikes reported in the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar. More on the extent of the damage dealt by Iran in Hubert Kisiel's report.
Despite a massive blow to the Iranian regime caused by the U.S.-led attack on Saturday, the Iranian army has not yet surrendered. Early Sunday morning, Iran's retaliatory strikes reached the city of Beit Shemesh, killing several people. One of the Iranian rockets has also reached Tel Aviv, destroying a block of flats in the area.
It was really scary. The door of my apartment shook. I've never seen anything like this.
This whole damage and trauma that we are experiencing feels... I don't have the words in English right now, but it feels really unnecessary and the damage is not worth it.
An Iranian missile also struck a hospital in Jerusalem, killing 8 and injuring 12 others. While devastating, the Iranian strikes are not confined to Israeli territory. The regime has also sent drones and missiles towards multiple Gulf countries. The attacks have resulted in dozens of deaths, destruction of civilian infrastructure, and closure of airspace about Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, among other Middle Eastern countries. Iranian missiles and drones also hit the Dubai and Abu Dhabi airports. The falling debris from the strikes killed 1 person and injured 11 in total.
When I heard the first bang, I felt so scared. We went outside to check, but we were also scared, and to be honest, I didn't really sleep well because of that, but let's see how it goes.
In Qatar, the country's interior ministry informed that early Sunday morning, Iranian attacks wounded 16 people, putting civil defense force in a state of full emergency readiness.
As part of the continuous monitoring of field developments, the Ministry of Interior confirms that security authorities and civil defense teams, in coordination with relevant entities, immediately activated approved response plans to safeguard public safety, ensure continuity of services, and maintain full readiness to address any emergency.
Amid rising Israeli and U.S. pressure, the Iranian regime is actively escalating the conflict by targeting both military and civilian infrastructure. It also began the process of picking new leaders from their own ranks, likely to continue the authoritarian legacy of the late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei.
As blows are exchanged, the United States military and economic partners are on the receiving end of Iran's retaliatory campaign. TVP World's editor-in-chief, Michał Broniatowski, is in Dubai and joins me now to give us an overview of the situation. Good evening, Mr. Broniatowski. So what is the situation like in Dubai right now, a place which has been considered one of the safest places in the Middle East before the escalation?
I think it's safe again. There was a night last night which was a bit noisy, I would say. We were awakened with special text messages which were accompanied with a very loud sort of siren on our phones. So we didn't sleep late at night, but otherwise in the morning there were also some explosions heard from very, very large distance, which caused the hotel management in which we live to move everybody inside for breakfast. Otherwise, it's all quiet. We can see a skyline of Dubai behind me, and then you can see skies are quiet, and really the only difference, obvious difference, is that streets are also empty. People are not, it was Sunday, people are not walking in masses as usual, and no sound of music, quiet, but also quiet because people are quiet.
So you mentioned these streets being empty. Are there fears that the attacks will actually intensify, leading to more civilian losses?
Well, if they occur, they would probably cause some losses. I hope the location in which we live, which is about 20 kilometers from the city center, makes our life safer. By the way, this picture which you showed right now was not from Dubai, it was from Bahrain. There was any spectacular event like that in here. My wife witnessed last night falling remains of a drone hitting the famous hotel, which you can see behind me. So I didn't see it, and I didn't believe her until I saw footage from this event. And now what we see is a place which we happened to pass by last night. I was absolutely convinced that there was no strike by any drone, but then there was footage which convinced me that they may have been an inadvertent just fall of some flying object which caused severe fire, but not in the building itself, but outside in a parking outside of this hotel.
Mr. Broniatowski, please stay safe. Thank you so much for joining me here on World News Tonight. This was Michał Broniatowski, TVP World's editor-in-chief, joining me from Dubai.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Markets are bracing for impact following the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran after Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatened to close off the Strait of Hormuz. As the passage remains critical for transportation of major quantities of gas and oil, the question on everyone's mind is how will the conflict affect the global economy? Gabriela Leononek reports.
Attention all ships, attention all ships, attention all ships. This is Sepah Navy. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy.
Following this announcement sent to the European Union's naval mission Aspides via radio transmission.
All navigating through the Strait of Hormuz is forbidden. No ship in every type is not allowed to pass from the Strait of Hormuz till next notice.
Numerous tankers are gathering at both the entrance and exit of the Strait of Hormuz. No vessels are permitted to traverse the strait, which connects the Persian Gulf with the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, and is the world's most vital oil export route. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz will trigger sharp price increases as soon as markets open on Monday, as it is a crucial energy corridor through which 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supplies pass.
I think that 10%, it should be something that will happen, yes? But the question is how fast those oil resources will be released again to the market.
Most of that oil travels to Asian countries, not Europe, but Europe imports about 10% of its liquefied natural gas through the Strait of Hormuz, according to the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis.
But when we connected with what happened in Venezuela, we'll see that our two most important suppliers of China in oil. So in my opinion, that also have this a part of the war, economic war between United States and China.
But the impact of the military intervention in Iran goes far beyond the stress on energy and financial markets. Global airlines cancelled flights across the Middle East on Saturday and Sunday, and their stocks could be under pressure if the conflict spreads and forces more airspace closures. Iranian missiles were dropped on several countries in the region. On Sunday alone, more than 3,400 flights were cancelled at 7 Middle Eastern airports, according to Flight Radar 24. This represents hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, but also leaves passengers traveling to various destinations stranded at the airports.
The flights are cancelled from into Dubai's airspace. So they're advising us that the airport flight from here to Dubai has been cancelled.
And then unfortunately, we still have some students that went there earlier than us and they're stuck in Dubai and we don't know when they'll be able to come back home.
We don't have any information. No one's telling us anything. We cannot get into contact with anyone. We're trying to go home.
The problem is cancellation of flights due to military activities aren't typically covered by insurance. But even in that case, passengers' rights must be considered.
Extraordinary circumstances such as military conflict do not remove airlines' responsibilities. They still own passengers' duty of care, so meals, hotel accommodation if needed, and the choice between rebooking and a refund.
Flight tracking data showed aircraft diverting around closed airspace in the region, underscoring the immediate impact on one of the world's busiest corridors linking Europe and Asia. For TVP World, Gabriela Jelonek.
The news of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death sparked polarized reactions inside Iran and around the world, from grief and anger to celebration. It also raises urgent questions about what comes next for Iran and the wider Middle East. More on the world's reaction in Konrad Gorlinski's report.
This was the tearful announcement made early Sunday morning by Iranian state media informing of the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Not all reactions were as somber, however, as some from neighboring Pakistan and Iraq, also home to many Shia Muslims, reacted with anger.
Allahu Akbar!
In Karachi on Sunday afternoon, Pakistani police clashed with protesters who breached the outer wall of the U.S. consulate, leaving 9 people dead. In Baghdad, loud blasts were heard and smoke from tear gas blanketed the area. Signs of an effort by security forces to prevent protesters from reaching the U.S. Embassy in the Green Zone. Reactions on the other side of the globe, however, were quite different. Members of the Iranian diaspora in Toronto, Canada, celebrated upon hearing the news.
We're very, very, very hopeful and joyful and excited for a free Iran.
As did those in Los Angeles, California. And many were filled with hope that a regime change could now be on the horizon. In Europe, Belgian Iranians also celebrated on Sunday.
What is also clear is that we must think first of Iranians back home and of the Iranian diaspora abroad. They make it absolutely clear that it's in the country's national interest for Americans, Israelis, and Europeans to join forces to bring about regime change. And we need to truly understand one thing: political Islam must disappear.
Down under in Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese put it very bluntly.
This claimed countless lives in Iran, but also internationally. He is responsible for orchestrating attacks on Australian soil. His passing will not be mourned.
But not everyone considers the toppling of the regime a cause for celebration. As reported by Russian media, Khamenei ally Vladimir Putin referred to the Iranian leader's death as a cynical murder. And at the UN on Saturday, China remained subdued, but warned about a possible spillover of the conflict.
Military force is not the right way to resolve international disputes. It only intensifies hatred and fuels the conflict. The escalation and spillover of the situation in the Middle East are not in the interest of any party.
And this may be a valid point. Iranian attacks on numerous states continue across the Arabian Gulf, and some, like Qatar, are already weighing military options.
The state of Qatar reserves its full and legitimate right to respond to this targeting, in accordance with the provisions of international law and the Charter of the United Nations.
Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, a major mediator in the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks, is understandably concerned.
I am dismayed. Active and serious negotiations have yet again been undermined. Neither the interests of the United States nor the cause of global peace are well served by this. And I pray for the innocents who will suffer. I urge the United States not to get sucked in further. This is not your war.
Now, with Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, vowing revenge for Khamenei's killing, many worry that this conflict may spill over across the entire Middle East and disturb the fragile peace between Shia and Sunni Muslims. This could, in turn, throw numerous countries in the region back into chaos and civil war. For TVP World, I'm Conrad Gorlinski.
And now to talk in more detail about the latest developments in the Middle East and the impact on the region and the world, it is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good evening. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening.
So, the U.S. has, I would say, quite a troubled history of intervention in the Middle East. Does Donald Trump have a realistic plan for the future of Iran, or is Iran going to be left to fend for itself?
Well, if we have a plan, if he has a plan, we haven't seen it, we the public, and nor has the U.S. Congress, which I think is one of the troubling aspects of this attack. As your viewers will know, U.S. presidents, like most leaders of democratic countries, are required to get parliamentary approval, in the case of the U.S. congressional approval, to go to war, and that has not happened. We also haven't seen the U.S. make the case to the United Nations, the UN Security Council, or the General Assembly, for that matter, or nor have we seen it made. Have we seen the Trump administration make the case for this war to the U.S. public? So we don't know, is the short answer, and that is not an insignificant matter, since the rationale for going to war is essentially is the legitimacy. If there is a valid case, then it should be made according to the U.S. Constitution, and it hasn't been made nor to Congress, neither to Congress nor to the UN, nor to the general public. So that is where we are at the moment.
So you mentioned the Congress, you mentioned the general public. We know of the first casualties on the American side. Three people dead, 5 seriously wounded. For Donald Trump, each American casualty raises stakes domestically. Let's make no mistake there. How long do you think that this attack on Iran is actually going to take place, considering the situation domestically, where you mentioned that the Congress has not been actually in the loop, and the opinion of the civil population?
I think what Donald Trump is hoping for is a quick in and out intervention of the kind that took place in Venezuela. In this case, it clearly involves killing the leader rather than taking him out of the country. But what he was elected on was a promise of no forever wars. And what he's betting on is that he can go into a country, or rather he can send the U.S. military into a country, get the leader removed, and then withdraw from that country without it becoming a protracted war. But there is no guarantee of that. A war famously takes two. It takes two to tango in a war. So Iran has to say in how long this takes, and Iran has struck back, and as you mentioned, killed 3 U.S. soldiers. This is why it's so important for the public and for Parliament, in this case, the U.S. Congress, and indeed for the United Nations, to know what it is that necessitated this intervention. If it was something extraordinary, then that's something that the U.S. public and Congress and the rest of the United Nations should be told about. But we don't know what it is, nor what the strategy will be, and as a result, we don't know what comes after these strikes have taken place today and yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Uncertainty seems to be spreading in the Gulf among the U.S. allies when we're looking, as we reported here on TVP World earlier on the program, on Iran lashing out. So is there a way these attacks are going to come to a close soon enough, or are we actually entering a longer conflict, a long-term conflict in the Middle East that is going to engulf more than just that region?
Once again, we don't know, simply because we are not receiving any information. We are receiving information, of course, about what's taking place, but we don't know anything about the underlying rationale,
with everything,
or the
with
strategy.
all the details that you've been given.
But what is important to remember is first of all, that the implications go far beyond the Iranian government. So, for example, aviation in the region has already had to reroute out of the affected airspace. So airlines are affected. Shipping in the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a standstill. It's too dangerous to sail into the Strait of Hormuz. There were reports that the Iranian government had closed the Strait of Hormuz. That doesn't seem to be the case, but it's too dangerous at any rate for ships to go in or out. So no shipping. Well, shipping is simply has ground to a standstill in the Strait of Hormuz, and this will continue for as long as the different sides continues to strike. What we do know is what President Trump told The Atlantic magazine today, which is that Iran wants to have talks, and he said, if they want to talk, I'm happy to talk. That is the extent of the information we have. If such talks were to take place, then clearly hostilities would have to cease before the talks could take place. But that is the only information we have, that quote from President Trump in The Atlantic magazine. But it is important to remember that the effect of this conflict is not just on buildings and leaders in Iran. It is also on global logistics, which is so crucial in the Middle East, because it is a hub for all kinds of aviation and shipping, and also for the neighboring countries, which have now been dragged in because Iran has struck some of them in response.
So do you think that when the markets open tomorrow, because this is something that has been widely considered since the attack took place, do you think that this is going to have a major impact on world economy?
I don't think it will have massive impact on share prices, but what the effect that is already being seen is, as I mentioned, on global shipping, and the Strait of Hormuz is crucial to global shipping, specifically shipping of oil. Around 1/5 of the world's oil travels through the Strait of Hormuz. So it will have an impact on, it's already having an impact on shipping. It will have an impact on global oil prices. It will have an impact on global shipping insurance. It's just not, insurance is just not possible to obtain for some of these waters at the moment, which means that ships can't sail even if they would want to, or even if their crews and owners want to do. So all of that is taking place in the background, and the result of disruptions and hurdles to shipping is that at the end of that process, consumer prices will go up, because shipping will continue to happen, but we'll have to go through other waters. And in the case of oil in the Strait of Hormuz, it simply won't be transported from there. So at the end of the day, consumer prices will go up. And that's something that will be felt around the world, because this is not just ships sailing within the Middle East, but they sail through the Middle East or from the Middle East to other countries. The same thing goes for aviation.
And for my final question, I wanted to go back to a statement that was made by Moscow, which earlier called on the international community to assess what it called, quote, irresponsible actions aimed at undermining peace, stability and security, unquote, in the Middle East. Well, that seems quite rich coming from a country that is entering the 5th year of war that it waged against a sovereign country, unprovoked. Is Russia concerned that one of its biggest allies is under so much pressure from the U.S. and Israel?
Yes, it clearly is. And in the past, Russia and Iran have tried to prop each other up. Iran has, over these past 4 years, exported drones and drone components to Russia for use in Ukraine, that kind of thing. Russia doesn't have many allies. Iran is one of them. So this is clearly not a minor matter to Russia. But there is also the matter of the effect that this will have on the United States standing in the world. So and the West standing in the world by extension. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the West was able to condemn that invasion credibly, because it was a flagrant violation of international rules. But being able to condemn such behavior by Russia depends on Western countries not engaging in similar behavior themselves. And when there is, when it happens, as is now the case, that Western countries go to or take military action against other countries without a UN mandate, then that opens the door for Russia and indeed for China and other countries to criticize and condemn the West, in this case, the United States.
Thank you very much for joining. Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, was my guest tonight on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Klaudia, Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more from the region and the world. Good night.